Mike Greenberg, Laura Rutledge. We're here from Get Up, and we are delighted to have Jay Williams and Jalen Rose and Stephen A. Smith with us this morning as we will spend this morning remembering Kobe Bryant, one of the great heroes and one of the great stars in the history of American or international sports. And we will hear from all of these analysts and friends of Kobe Bryant in just a moment. TJ Holmes from ABC News has been on site covering the events for us, and he joins us now from Calabasas with the latest. TJ, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, Greeny. And you might have seen this yesterday, but the phrase, "Dear God," was trending on Twitter. People were saying, "Dear God, not Kobe. Dear God, don't let this be true." People essentially in disbelief that this global icon, this cultural icon could be gone. The investigation into the crash, which happened in the hills of this neighborhood behind me, is underway now. But what we do know is that Kobe died doing something that he has done countless times, take a helicopter to get around LA. And he died doing something he loved. He was taking his daughter to her basketball game.
Shock and heartache around the world at the news. Kobe Bryant, dead at 41 years old, killed Sunday when the helicopter he was in crashed in the hills of Calabasas, California. Also on board, his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, and 7 others on their way to Kobe's Mamba Sports Academy in Newbury Park for Gianna's basketball game. Kobe was expected to coach. This photo was taken at the gym filled with kids who'd been awaiting Kobe's arrival. They kneeled on the court upon hearing the news. Kobe's helicopter took off from Orange County just after 9 a.m. for what was expected to be a short trip. But at 9:45 a.m., tragedy. The helicopter crashed into the foggy hills.
Visibility 2.5 miles with haze, ceiling 1,100 overcast, temperature 122.8.
Before the crash, the LAPD grounded all police helicopters, saying weather conditions did not meet the standard for flight, though it's unclear if weather played any role in the crash. We are learning this morning there was an unusual rapid loss of altitude and increase in airspeed seconds before the crash. The NTSB and the FBI are both at the crash site investigating. Kobe often used helicopters to get around L.A. Here he is in 2016, even regularly taking his own helicopter to home games during the NBA season.
He loved being in that helicopter. He certainly was never really concerned about it. For him to be gone, particularly through these means, is incredibly tragic.
Just weeks ago, Kobe and Gianna, known as Gigi, were spotted at a Brooklyn Nets game having a father-daughter courtside moment that went viral.
I love this.
Fans showed love for Kobe at the Staples Center, and tributes continue to pour in for the man his fans lovingly call the Black Mamba.
Kobe Bryant has hit a shot at the buzzer!
Former teammate Shaquille O'Neal tweeting, "There's no words to express the pain I'm going through with this tragedy of losing my niece, Gigi, and my brother. I'm sick right now." And Magic Johnson called Kobe the greatest Laker of all time. During Sunday's games, players paid tribute, many of them holding back tears. The San Antonio Spurs and the Toronto Raptors among many of the teams who took a 24-second violation at the start of the game to honor Kobe, who famously wore number 24. The NFL Pro Bowl also quickly turned into a tribute. One of the greatest to ever take the court, the proud father of 4 daughters transcended sports, telling me he wanted a legacy beyond basketball.
That's been what we do. That's not who we are. We've all been something more outside of our craft. And we look forward to continuing to grow and continuing to evolve as people.
And Greeny, the FBI will be joining the NTSB in investigating this crash, and you better believe, yes, that weather, in fact, will be a major part of this investigation. There was heavy fog and some weather conditions that kept the local police here from even putting their helicopters up, so that'll be a part of it. But for now, a lot of just disbelief in trying to understand how this is possible, that this man, not in the prime of his career, but it seems the prime of his life, is now gone, Greeny.
It's TJ Holmes with the very latest from Calabasas. We appreciate this very much, TJ. Thanks.
Yeah.
Now, as TJ mentioned, Kobe and Gianna were on their way to a youth basketball game at the Mamba Sports Academy. On board the helicopter was Orange Coast College baseball coaching legend John Altobelli, his wife and his daughter, Christina Mauser, a basketball coach at an Orange County, California private school and mother of 3. The pilot and 2 other victims remain unidentified. Meanwhile, a source told our Young Masuk that the Lakers found out about Kobe's death while on the team plane flying home from Philadelphia. You see pictures there of a visibly shaken LeBron James wiping his eyes with tissues and walking alone from the Laker plane after it landed in Southern California. And as you saw just a taste of during TJ's piece, grief-stricken players and coaches from around the sport paid their respects to Kobe yesterday. Nearly every team playing yesterday started their game with a 24-second violation as the fans chanted Kobe's name. In Atlanta, Trae Young started the game wearing Kobe's number 8. He committed an 8-second violation before emotionally changing to his regular number 11 jersey. He later hit a half-court shot and pointed to the sky and mouthed the words, "Rest in peace, Kobe." In New York City, Madison Square Garden was lit up in Lakers colors, and inside the arena, Kobe's numbers were shown on the floor before the Knicks faced the Nets. Kyrie Irving did not play in this game, mourning the loss of his close friend. It was a very difficult day for Kobe's basketball family.
You know, I just don't have a lot to say. The news is just devastating to everybody who knew him, known him a long time. And, you know, he means a lot to me, obviously. You know, he was such a great opponent. You know, he had that DNA that very few athletes can ever have.
Today is one of the saddest days in my lifetime. It seems like a bad dream that you just want to wake up from. It's a nightmare. Just a great leader, just a great champion. But I would miss him. I would miss the friendship.
And so that was just a taste of all the reaction from yesterday. Again, Jay Williams, Jalen Rose, and Stephen A. Smith. I saw each of you yesterday on ESPN sharing some personal thoughts on this. And Stephen A., I'll start with you now that you've had a little time to digest this, and I'm sure talking, as you always do, to so many people around the basketball world. What are the thoughts on your mind as we wake up today?
Just pure devastation. You know, it's 24 hours later. Pain hasn't subsided. The sorrow hasn't subsided. You know, to know Kobe, to know what kind of life he planned on having, you know, to know that he's just 41 years of age, so brilliant, so accomplished in so many different things, but still as tenacious, as committed as ever to build a second life for himself, per se. You know, contributing to the sport of women's basketball the way that he had planned to, just raving about his daughter at every turn. You know, he came up to me, came up to Jay-Z and a few others and was like, wait until you see my daughter play. She is something special. He was so proud of her. And to know that, you know, he's gone at age 41, it's just devastating. It's incredibly sad. And then to, on top of that, to know that she was with him at age 13 years of age. And, you know, all of us up here are fathers. And you can just imagine, unfortunately, what the final moments were like. And, you know, knowing him, he probably grabbed her in his arms and said, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. Knowing that it wasn't. It's just a devastating thing to imagine. And, you know, speaking of Magic, yesterday, Magic couldn't stop crying. Speaking to Shaq, Shaq was in tears. He was devastated. And, you know, so many others around the NBA community, virtually speechless. And, you know, last time I saw him was New Year's Eve. We were partying together in Bel Air, you know, and he was looking forward to a very, very prosperous 2020. You know, he was sitting up there and congratulating me and, you know, talking about all the fellas up here and beyond and talking about how proud he was of everybody. And then he was like, 1 + 1 = 1 billion. I said, what are you talking about? He said, that's what we go for. That's what we shoot for. It's not just about money. He wasn't speaking about money. He was just speaking metaphorically, like, excuse me, you go for it all. You exhaust every means, every measure imaginable to acquire the aspirations that you have. He was relentless in that regard. That to him was what life was all about, a pursuit of excellence. And to see him gone at age 41 when he had so much more to offer the world the only word that comes to my mind is devastation.
You know, Jalen, you were a peer. You faced him. For those not aware, Jalen, you played against him in the NBA Finals. You were playing against him in maybe his most famous game ever when he scored 81 points. And I actually saw a story this morning that he was interviewed in high school while he was in high school and said that Jalen Rose was his favorite player, which I can only imagine how you reacted when you heard that. What are your thoughts, and what can you tell people about what he was like to know sort of eye to eye in the way that you did?
And like Stephen A. said, it's just devastating for everyone involved. His wife, Vanessa, now with 3 kids, basically to raise in this climate where they lost their father, they lost their sister. That's just heartbreaking to think about that dynamic. Knowing Kobe once he got drafted, I was living in Los Angeles in the late 90s and playing basketball with him at UCLA. And he was crazy confident, but it wasn't arrogance. It was more so, I'm going to be the greatest player of all time. And he's 17 years old, and everybody looking at him like he's crazy. But at the same time, he was working towards that. And as you made finals, when he won his first championship, and he basically had his crowning moment, overtime, Shaq fouls out, you know, the building's going crazy, he makes a jump shot, and he does the famous put his arms down. And if you notice, that is continued to carry. LeBron does it, so many people do it in all types of sports. And then working in the media. I've been covering the NBA Finals on television since 2002. So I've been to every one of his finals. I've seen every one of his championships. And to see him mature as a young man into a leader of that team, and then the face of the franchise, and then one of the faces iconically of the league, that level of maturity and discipline is not just something that all young people have. He spoke a couple of languages. He was really cultured. And it seemed like he did everything so very early, for example, getting married. Like he's been married 18 years, won an Academy Award right after he finished playing, started the Mamba Academy. Like he was on his way, like Stephen A. said, to be that entrepreneur. And the embodiment of Kobe Bryant, for me, while I give Jay a chance to talk about him, is all of the cliches that we use in sports, he actually embodied. You know, first one there, last one to leave, cutthroat attitude, thirst to win, never say die attitude, play injured. He embodied all of that. And his untimely death is really devastating for everyone.
I barely slept last night. I was in bed with my wife, and I kept staring at her, and I kept staring at my daughter in the other room, just being thankful for them being able to be here, and did a deep dive just on Kobe and everything, and saw the J. Rose commercial that for the first time all day after yesterday speaking about it, trying to process my own emotions throughout the day was very difficult. And I get actually really, it made me smile in bed last night, because that commercial, when he says, "I'll take 81 olives," really epitomizes who Kobe is as a competitor. He was special. There's certain people that you get a chance to be around where the air is rarefied, the density in the air changes. And for him, it was always that way. He was uplifting. I also go to a place of, I can't imagine what his family is going through, and I know nothing in my life will compare to this, but people always came up to me and they apologized to me from the worst day of my life and said, "I'm sorry for you." And I just want people to be cognizant of that, even though I know their intentions are well-being. You know, what that family is going through, we have to support them, and maybe that sometimes it's not what worries me, that's with the hug. Letting them have their privacy and dealing with that, letting the girls have their privacy. And I know media really wants to be involved, but you know, not plastering their faces everywhere, and let them have, it never heals. You never heal from that. And I'm still lost for words, guys. Like, I don't think you just put that into words.
Stephen A., one of the things that Kobe was so passionate about was the youth, and trying to find ways to teach and also encourage. What part of his legacy is based around that in your mind?
Well, his whole thing was that, often when we talked, he would reflect on when he came into the league, and particularly the first 2 years, because we look at the illustrious career with the 36,000 plus points and, third on the all-time scoring list before LeBron James passed him the other day. And we almost forget that the first couple of years of his NBA career were incredibly, incredibly tough. Trying to, just adjust to the NBA life, coming off the bench, not even starting, certainly not enjoying the level of success that he ultimately would end up enjoying over the vast majority of the next 18 years or so. And he remembered the people that maligned him. He remembered the people that tried to question what he was going to be able to do, whether or not he'd have the commitment to do it, et cetera. And he just talked about being young and impressionable at a particular moment in time. And he was incredibly fortunate because the first 8 years of his life, obviously he grew up in Italy, and, before he comes to Pennsylvania, stars at Lower Merion as an All-American. And his mentality was, I was very blessed and fortunate to have the mentality that I have, but understand that most kids do not. And the kind of things that you can do can really, really dissuade and create a roadblock and an object in their mind and in their hearts that could curtail them from prospering and ultimately reaching their goals. And we need to be incredibly careful and guarded when it comes to our youth and be about the business of uplifting them instead of knocking them down. But in the process of uplifting them, always remind them that you're going to have to work to get it. Never sit up there and give the impression that it's okay to be lackadaisical and laissez-faire about things and go about life in cruise control. If you want something bad enough, you got to put your foot to the pedal and really, really push it down and go for it. And as long as you make sure that you send that message to the youth while uplifting them in the process, they will prosper and they won't let you down. And that was his firm belief.
Stephen A., you and I have both covered the sport and all sports for a long time. And I wonder if you found this as well. And it's so interesting about him. Most of the great athletes that I've had the opportunity to interview, whether it be on television or with Kobe, I was frequently in events, corporate events and things like that he would have me come and interview him in those places. Most former athletes love talking about their playing career. They love talking about their exploits. They love talking about their past. Kobe Bryant never wanted to talk about that. Kobe was always on to the next thing. He genuinely, the last interview I did with him, which is for this show, I asked him about the notion that people will compare him to Michael, people will compare him to LeBron. And he answered, and he's the only one who I believed when he said it. He really doesn't care about his place in the game's history. All he really was concerned about was the next challenge, the next mountain to climb. It was very unique amongst great athletes to have that perspective.
He was very big about that because he thought that he was more than just a basketball player. I mean, you got to remember something. We're walking around here. This guy was trilingual, for crying out loud, at a minimum. Clearly, he spoke fluent Italian, Spanish, and English. He joked with me about being able to speak German, and I laughed, and then he looked at me and said, "You really think I'm playing, don't you?" I'm not playing, And so, we knew his brilliance. He talked about, when he won the Academy Award, he barely mentioned it. He said, on to the next chapter, new challenges. This is what you live for. It's about inspiring other people, but it's also about uplifting yourself and inspiring yourself. He had plotted and planned his exit from the game of basketball. It was not a struggle for him to move beyond his playing days. It was all set. He knew exactly what he was going to do, and he went about the business of doing it.
Today is obviously an extraordinarily sad day, and all of us feel sad, but I do hope that we can spend some of this morning remembering the ways in which he made us feel great. Watching Kobe Bryant play basketball was exhilarating in a way that few things in sports history have ever been. So there's a part of me that just wants to ask you this question, Jalen. What was it like playing against him? What was it like being on the court playing against Kobe Bryant?
So a nightmare, because he represented, as an opponent, the worst of both worlds. He had mercurial talent and athleticism. He was really quick. He was really athletic. He played above the rim. He played mid-range, on the post, on the elbow. He shot the three. He continued to work on his game. And you referenced the 81 Olives commercial. What a lot of people don't realize, and they keep using the word commercial, that was actually a pilot that I did called Jalen versus Everyone. And we wrote that for Kobe, and we had him show up to do a script. And if you notice, what he says is, "How are you enjoying retirement?" I've been doing a lot of investing. He was talking about a lot of the things that you guys are describing. And so that same guy with all of that talent and all of that intelligence that's going to also outwork you and have a killer instinct to the point where he can get 50, he could get 60, he could get 70. And what I want all young people to pay attention to, I've been saying this since it happened. The most incredible thing about that 81-point night, he never talked trash. And he never made any highlights. When you see the greatest plays of Kobe Bryant of all time, none of them come from that game. Because if you trash talk, A, you get out of your zone, and B, somebody wants to take you out. He was putting the smack down so much, Greeny, nowadays, somebody do one crossover or make one shot, it's oohs and ahs, thumping your chest, pointing at the sky, pointing at the crowd. He did none of that. So that discipline that everybody talks about that he has, it plays itself out literally in that game.
I remember playing against him when he was, and he wouldn't talk trash, but it was more like he was having a conversation with me in game. I think he was more of that kind of player where I don't know if that psychologically, it sure as hell gave him an edge when I went against him because he knew every single facet of the triangle offense and would tell me where I was supposed to go before I was even going there. So I think psychologically he was always different. And there's a line that he said that will stay with me for the rest of my life. He said, I always want to outwork my potential. And that's who Kobe was. And I feel horrible because he was just recognizing the brilliance and the potential of who he was as a father and a husband.
The interesting thing about what Jalen was bringing up at the time, Sam Mitchell was the coach of the Toronto Raptors. And I was on the phone with Sam Mitchell last night, and he was reminding me about how when Kobe dropped that 81 in that game, it was like, people were like, why didn't you do something? Or why didn't you get more physical with him? He said, we doubled him. We tried everything. Boxing, we did everything. He was beating double teams for crying out loud. But he talked about not disrespecting the game by trying to intentionally hurt him. You want to stop him, go out there and stop him. Don't cheat your way to it, because a lot of times when people are scorching you like that, somebody give them a forearm or elbow, do something to them to slow them down. But he's like, no, we're not going to do it that way.
Yeah, for those who are, again, not normally with us in the mornings, he scored 81 points in that game, which is the second most points that any player has ever scored in any NBA game. And maybe his most famous game was the 81-point night. The last game of his NBA career was another extraordinarily legendary night. And let's show you some pictures from that if we can. Kobe's